Available.
That's a blooper.
I'm not sure what that is, but that is very important. Welcome to Quincy Real Estate Happy Hour. My name is Dustin Vance with Cathy Anderson, Sandy Frillman. Today we're going to take you on the selling journey. We're going to talk about the process of selling your home and some things you should and shouldn't do, and hopefully ease your mind a little bit on this process. We'll start with Cathy. Cathy, what's one of the first steps sellers should do when they're looking to sell their home?
After they've contacted an agent? Is
That's the first one. Let's start there.
Yes, definitely. Maybe do a little research, look at reviews online. You know, it's
in regards to how to pick an agent, the agent they're looking for. Okay.
It's an important part of the transaction, maybe the most important part. So definitely do a little research online, ask friends their experiences with realtors, and choose your realtor.
Sandy, do you think potential sellers should be interviewing more than one agent?
I think so. I think you have an opportunity to get a wide range of agents if you do talk to them. Maybe they have an expertise in land or actual property, housing. So it is good to interview.
Cathy, what are some characteristics you should look for in a listing agent?
Well, I think first of all, maybe have a conversation with the agent and make sure that you just kind of click with them overall, that you can be on the same page and see yourself working with this person and trust them, believe what they tell you. Agent, is good with social media. That's where buyers are looking these days. So, just to be sure that they really have a social media presence and use that as a tool for advertising. Prompt, if you want prompt responses, maybe check that they're on the same page with you as that.
Yeah, I think sellers are knowing how often they're being communicated with and in what forms is a good idea.
Probably want to be sure that your agent is efficient with technology because, those are the times. And like we use Dotloop, electronic signature program, and, you can do everything by email. So it's very efficient.
Sandy, what would kind of be the next step after you picked your agent or you're in the interview process for agents? What's something they should be doing for you?
The agent needs to go out to your property, take a look at it, see what you need to do to prepare it for sale. Many times it's perfect. Everything looks great, but there are times when there's maybe too many things in the house that maybe you need to downsize.
Yeah, a little decluttering.
Yes. Yeah. And there are times you might think about having some staging done. We have some great stagers out there. They make the house look almost perfect. So it's something to consider.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I think having agents out, they'll most of them will try to do a pre-listing presentation. They'll grab some information from the house that they can't find anywhere else. They'll interview the seller, go through, let the seller kind of go through the house and kind of show them the house as it is. And I think anybody that comes to the table and tries to give you some kind of marketing price without really seeing the house first, I think that's tough because condition plays such a huge role in the pricing of a home. And yeah, your neighbor's house could have sold for X and you think you're going to get Y, but maybe their house had an extra bathroom in the basement or, was recently freshly painted and renovated.
Right.
I think that makes a big deal.
There's so many things in your home that you get used to looking at. You don't realize that someone else could look at that and say, that's not exactly what I'm thinking I want my condition of the house to be in.
Sure.
So the agent helps you get past that. He has fresh eyes, and I think that's a big benefit.
That's true. An agent can look at the house objectively and give some guidance on what needs to be done to depersonalize and neutralize and just make it as appealing as possible for the largest buyer pool, really.
Right.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? Is you want every buyer that's possibly looking to be interested in that home. That's how you get the best offer, really. Right. So if you're having multiple agents come out and you're getting multiple listing presentations, and should you all just go with the highest marketing price?
No.
As a seller? I was gonna say, I think it's a trap a lot of sellers fall into is they want the most out of their home, and we understand that.
Yeah.
What they don't want is the home to hit the market at a too high of a price to where it sits, because just sitting, no action, no showings, no activity, it becomes dormant. And I know it sounds silly, but even once you reduce the price, it never will have the same activity level unless as it would if it hit the market in the correct price range.
Right.
Yeah, priced right, you sell it right away. Priced wrong, you're going to be paying extra taxes, extra upkeep. You don't gain anything by letting it sit for a while. Even if you think you're going to get more money up front on it, doesn't end up working that way.
To get an agent to work for them, there's going to be I'm assuming a contract we're going to be signing, right, Cathy?
Yes.
Can you go through that contract a little bit?
So the listing agreement specifies obviously price, the brokerage fee, the time frame, the period for the listing agreement. The concept of dual agency, which that's probably another conversation. And just kind of the specifics of the agreement for the listing. Also, disclosures are signed with that at the time of listing. Those are just the seller disclosures. Typically, lead-based paint, radon, and then a residential real property disclosure.
And the disclosures outlines what you know to be true, not the agent, but the seller, the owner.
Definitely.
Yeah. So after the seller decides which agent they want to work with, Sandy, what can they expect from that agent at that point?
The agent's job is to prepare it for that sale. That means pictures, to put it on the MLS, to put it on social media. If it needs some staging, to suggest that, give names so that they can do that. To put a yard sign in the yard, we have lighted signs, which is really nice at night so that the for sale sign can be illuminated. We use electronic lockbox that tells you exactly who's going in at what time, how long they stay. From that as well, we get feedback on how well the agent felt the showing went. So from there, marketing and continuing to put that house out there so everyone can see it.
Lots of Facebook marketing. I think we found Facebook to be a really effective tool. Lots of people are on Facebook for
Absolutely.
marketing. Century 21 distributes to 200 different
300
websites,
plus.
I think.
Yeah.
All that distribution.
So we have the house on the MLS. We were under contract with the listing agent. So, Cathy, what are some of the things a listing agent will do for you in that period?
I think monitor feedback definitely, or gather feedback from the showings, the agents, or showing time. We have a nice little survey that goes out by email to agents. They can fill it out, based upon their clients' impressions at the showing. I use that tool definitely.
We also will, monitor activity, obviously. If there's not a lot happening, we have to figure out why, right? Is it ineffective marketing? Is it, or maybe in a price range that doesn't fit the house, and we need to kind of have a conversation about price adjustments. One question I have for Sandy: who dictates what the list price is of the home?
Always the seller.
Not the selling agent. The seller,
The
correct?
seller.
Yep.
We get our information from the seller.
Yep.
But we do look at the market, activity, comps, etc., and we go back to the seller to say, this is what we're seeing.
We
This is-
provided a suggestion, right? But at the end of the day, the seller gets to determine
That's correct.
what they list their home
That's
for.
correct. But it is up to the agent to give that information to the seller. Otherwise, the seller can't make that determination at all. And it does go by the number of showings. What we hear from the agents, our own buyers that go in to see these properties, and what we see on the market. And
Yeah.
if we don't give that information to the seller, we're doing them a big disservice.
Sure. So let's say we have a home that's not getting the traction we think it should. What are some things we can do to help that?
I think definitely look at price, obviously. I think also look at the presentation, what do the pictures look like, the description, the house itself. Is there consistent negative feedback about some aspect of the home that maybe the seller could address.
Sure. And then we can always hold open houses. I mean,
Right.
those are usually pretty helpful. People feel a little less timid about coming, when there's it's going to be open for a certain period of time. So yeah, we have some tools in our bag for that. We have it listed. We had multiple showings. All of a sudden, we're getting offers. How does a listing agent help with the offers that come in?
Well, we present all offers to the sellers. We advise them as to what the different loan products are that's coming in, because cash is king. That always is the best scenario. However, there are other loan products that could play a part in multiple offers, depending on what it is. Government programs are a little bit more tricky because they dictate more or better condition of the home than is conventional or cash. However, it is up to us to make sure that we present these offers in a timely manner so that the sellers can make that choice.
Our job is to summarize and explain the terms of the offer and offer our advice on, good, bad.
Yeah,
And
and we get the burden of going back if we're going to renegotiate or counter that offer, right? We as agents, the sellers don't have to do that. If they really feel like the house could get a little more, we get to go have that conversation with the buyers or the other agents. So we're there to kind of take some of that uneasiness away from them,
Right.
because of that.
We present it, they make the decision.
We get a house that's under contract. We agreed on price, agreed on closing date, all these things. Then I guess our job's done at that point, right? The listing agent just sits back and waits for it to close.
No.
No, what happens
fact,
then? Yeah.
Agents need to be upfront and intervene and get it moving for them, because it's so easy to be weeks into the transaction and end up it not going anywhere because no one's been monitoring.
What are things we're monitoring for?
Well, as an example, we work with the loan companies, our loan officers, banks, etc. We work with their appraisals, we work with inspectors. We schedule all of the different appointments, but we also make sure that the dates are met on the contract, because everything is dated to keep it moving
Right.
along. So our job is to monitor it and make sure that it happens, gets to closing table.
Some other items to be taken care of between the time that you have an accepted contract and the closing would be the appraisal, just to be sure that the appraisal is received. Is it satisfactory? The other thing would be title insurance. The seller is responsible for ordering the title insurance. So we as the agent do that, just to be sure that that title insurance report is received along with the draft deed, transfer declaration. Another big step would be if there are inspections. We handle everything in regard to any repair request, dealing, either with facilitating those actual repairs, or maybe there's a credit to the buyer, but just kind of addressing the whole issue of repair requests and actual repairs.
Is there a difference, do you think, between conventional repairs or inspections versus a government FHA?
Right. With a government loan, I always say that the appraiser is also doing a little mini inspection. So, those steps or those matters have to be addressed before the loan can close, before the transaction can close. Yes. Mm-hmm.
We've gone through getting listed, getting a contract for it, doing some repairs, appraisals. We're done, right? There's nothing else left to do.
I think there's a couple more steps.
A couple more steps.
I help the seller with getting the utilities transferred, so that the
What's
buyer,
the benefit of
buyer
that?
likewise will call and make sure that the utilities are transferred into their name as of the closing date. But I also work with the seller on their end to get that done. Mm-hmm. The house will need to be ready for the buyer to do a final walkthrough just before closing. So the seller needs to have everything out in terms of personal property, unless what is supposed to stay, appliances, but just make sure that otherwise the home is ready for the actual transfer to the buyer.
Another thing that comes up a lot is, what kind of condition is the home left in, Sandy?
Sweep ready.
Okay.
Now, what that generally means is the floors are swept. We're not talking windows washed or walls washed, But something where, it'd be nice to have the stove and the refrigerator cleaned out, but many times that isn't done.
Yeah.
But at least swept, they call it swept.
Yeah.
ready.
Okay.
The biggest thing is, and unfortunately everyone, they're anxious to get it sold, get to the table. So there's things left in the garage, in the basement, in the house, and many times they go ahead and accept it. It's something that you have to make a decision on, but
Right.
sometimes there's too many things left.
Sure.
It should be reasonable.
Yeah, there's things that are hard to get rid of. Like if they leave
Right.
mattresses and stuff like that, those are not easy items to get rid of, and I don't know many people that want those things left. So
Biggest thing that is always left is paint.
yeah,
Because everyone feels that, someone's going to want to touch up a room and leave the paint that many times people don't use the paint that's left.
right.
They like their own coloring, their own feel. However, that is one of the things that is left. And that is one of the things that has to be, actually, it's considered
Hazardous material.
yes. So it's really one of the worst things you could leave.
Yeah.
But that is the most prominent thing that's left.
Yep.
Where a seller and an agent can offer advice. If a seller has a question, can I leave this or that? We can be a resource, and sometimes we'll pass that on to the buyer. Are you okay if the seller leaves this table?
Absolutely.
But I think a seller's best move too is just to be sure the house looks as best as it can to
Yeah.
ensure a smooth transaction and
Right.
no
Sure.
surprises.
Right.
Okay, so we've got through the final walkthrough. Now we can finally get to the closing table. And
Presumably, we've reviewed the closing statement.
okay,
Yes.
so before the closing, we review closing statements, make sure the loan amount and the money and all that, what's due to the seller is all evened out. We review it for make sure that the property taxes are distributed correctly, and commissions are distributed correctly.
If there are any
And
repairs or anything, that's been paid for.
Yep, and that there's
needs
any-
to be on the closing statement.
there's any credits that has to be either side. So
Biggest thing is when people go to the closing table. Now the driver has his license, but many times the spouse may not have their license with them, and you cannot close without it.
yeah, it needs to be valid.
Absolutely.
And yeah, both whoever's signing anything needs to have those licenses or some other federal ID, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Play a little game.
Okay.
Red flag, green flag. I'm gonna give you something. You guys can tell me if you think it's a red flag or a green flag. During the listing presentation, when the seller's interviewing agents, they have 3 presentations, and two of them seems to be about in the same ballpark, and one's $15,000-$20,000 higher than the other 2. Is that red flag, green flag? What's your thoughts, Sandy?
A red flag.
Why is it a red flag in your mind?
Well, if you have the average coming in at a certain price and there's one that's quite a bit higher, that's usually a red flag.
What's that usually trying to? What
Well,
in your experience? What does that usually lend to?
Well, trying to buy the listing. However, it doesn't serve the seller at all because that property is going to sit there.
Any thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I mean,
For me, I think what I've heard is another that goes along with that is you have that listing presentation that's a little bit higher than everybody else's, and they've already had the conversation about, well, if we don't get any traction in the next 2 weeks, we're going to go ahead and lower.
Right.
That to me, in the back of my mind, like when I present somebody with the listing presentations, I'm very confident in the price ranges I put in there. I don't. We touch on it, but I don't feel like that's a need at that point.
Right. But also, sometimes sellers do that on their own.
Sure.
And it is up to the agent to say, understand where you're coming from, understand that's what you need, but I am showing you what the market is bearing. And,
Sure.
and if we can't get that, you do need to take a look at that within a week, not
Yeah.
wait 2 weeks,
Sure.
within a week. But when you have an agent saying that, they know better. They've
Right.
seen the market.
Right.
So,
Well, I mean, it can be one of two things, right? They could be trying to buy that listing, or they really don't know what they're doing, and they're overpricing the home based on old data or old comps, and that's a big red flag too, because we know the market changes fast, sometimes slow, but you have to know what's happening, and you have to kind of I like to look at trends. I don't like looking at necessarily the last week's data. What is the last week's data compared to 2, 3, 4 weeks before then? Is it trending up, trending down? You got to look at it that way, because, in my opinion, because just looking at the previous week's data could be a dip when the whole trend, the whole data is going like this, and this one takes a little dip. So another one is let's say you have you signed a listing agreement and your house gets on the market as a seller, and there's no communication with your agent. They don't reach out to tell you how showings are going. They don't reach out to have any conversation. Is that a red flag, green flag? Is that normal?
No, it's not, and it's a red.
Yeah.
There's no question. Are they too busy? Do they not care? I mean, there's a lot of factors for why they're not doing it.
I think so too. I mean, I think your agent should be in touch and communicating, and do we need to do anything differently? How are things going? Where are we positioned in the market? What else has occurred with activity? There's a lot to be in touch about.
Absolutely. We talked about, price reduction within a week. Well, that should be a conversation within a week on the activity and how the market is doing and how the house is doing and what kind of showings and what have you been doing to help me on social media and the marketing and etc. You can't have that if you had no conversation at all. I don't think anybody would like that.
And I think we, definitely want to be in communication, verbal contact, text, phone call, whatever, with our clients. I think Century 21 also has a nice tool called Golden Ruler that is a report that can be generated weekly that goes to a seller and shows the activity, like who's looking at the house, what website, even what city they're in. It's just a good way to make sure the house is getting the activity that it should, and just kind of interesting too, who's looking at your house.
Right.
Got a tricky one for you.
Okay.
You get multiple offer situation. One of the offers is a full cash offer as is. Is that a red flag or a green flag?
Well, that's green flag. That's a good thing.
Is it? What if the earnest money's really low?
Yeah, but you're throwing in something
I know.
else.
So at that point, what would it be?
Well, it would be cautionary red.
It'd be yellow? Maybe yellow flag?
Yellow.
Why is that?
Well, the reason we ask for earnest money is so that we see that you're really actually interested and you will go through the transaction. If you do not get the higher earnest money that the seller would like, then they may end up walking and not even using one of the contingencies in their contract, that they just absolutely just walk out of it. But a cash deal is always a good thing, and no inspections is great for the seller.
Thoughts?
No, I agree. Definitely.
Well, that wraps up our show for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found some things that were helpful. Feel free to leave us a comment and like and follow.
We get the flooring wrong in this room.
too.